Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live. It is Monday, October 24th. The year is 2022. Delighted to be joined in these trying times with Steve Grumbine, looking very sharp. He trimmed his beard, but still bringing the rage. Steve's joining us, usually Tuesdays, but double the Grumbine this week. We're going to have you on today and tomorrow. Quite a lot going on in the news. We have, well, let me wait. Please do your patriotic duty. Smash that like button. It's right under the YouTube video. Share this live stream. As you know, YouTube in its algorithmic hell doesn't like showing channels like this. So please share and like. Makes a big difference. Super chats, always appreciated. A lot of good stuff coming up. I actually interviewed earlier today, Steve, the lead organizer from Albany's Amazon that unfortunately just lost that union contest. And wait till you hear this. I mean, if you thought the union busting was bad in Staten Island, whew. So we'll post that tomorrow. But quite a lot going on. We have apparently Trump and his minions are already plotting to contest the midterms before there's any actual, well, early voting, but until before the election day happens. We also have Nancy Pelosi wants to change the subject from inflation. So I don't know, you're in Pennsylvania. They might already be running ads with her saying that because they're going to hammer Democrats with Pelosi's wisdom. There's also Chinese espionage thriller in the United Corporations of America. So we'll get into that. Seems like some people want war with China. And MSNBC, if you thought they could not slobber over Joe Biden and the Democratic Party enough, wait till you see this clip. It'll really have you nauseous. But Steve, before we start, what's going on in your world? What's going on, MMT? Talk to me.
Well, lots of going on there. And in terms of MMT, I think the big one is, and we talked about this last week with Truss. Obviously, her being ousted has brought out the monetarist and the new Keynesians being like the Larry Summers and others who have a hard-on for deficit spending. And the reason they have a hard-on for deficit spending is because they obviously know that it goes to the little people and then they can't control us as much. So anyway, a lot going on there. But I have obviously the Monday, Wednesday, Friday stuff that I'm doing at Real Progress in Action and Real Progressives with the Rogue Scholar. And also on Saturday, we have our normal Macro and Cheese podcast. This week, it'll be interesting. I'm not going to tip my hand to the who, but just suffice it to say it should be very, very exciting. And then obviously my time here is expanded here Monday and Tuesday with you, but also my Let's Get Ready to Grumble this past weekend was very short and sweet. I was feeling very somber, still am, trying to smile for y'all. Please check out yesterday's Grumble. It happened right in the middle of football, folks, so I'm so sorry to have interrupted you all, but check it out. It's worth your time.
Yeah, we'll have to reevaluate that and make sure we're putting it up at the same time. I thought halftime of Football Sunday might work, but maybe we'll move it. Hey, by the way, Ariana, I'm drinking wine for the live stream. I'll be with you soon, probably whiskey, but hope you're doing well. 5 o'clock. Yeah, that's fine to drink wine. So, Steve, let's start. Trump, I don't like covering Trump. Honestly, I could have profited a lot more over the last 5 years if I would have covered him 24/7. However, you and I have been talking quite a bit that unfortunately there seems to be the wheels in motion for political violence. We have seen Trump putting out his fatwas on Mitch McConnell and death wish in all caps. We've seen Marjorie Taylor Greene saying that the killings have begun and the Dems are coming for you. Obviously, you have a bunch of election deniers right now that might win elections around the country. So there's definitely, obviously, after the Mar-a-Lago raid, there was violence. There was Trump supporters who attacked an FBI office in Cincinnati. So right now, I mean, this country is a powder keg, and obviously, a lot of these Republicans are straight up calling for violence. But Trump, it just came out in Rolling Stone that he is already plotting to challenge the midterms, particularly in your neck of the woods in Pennsylvania. This is from Rolling Stone. Trump plans to challenge the 2022 elections, starting in Philly. In early September, Donald Trump welcomed a handful of Republican allies to Manhattan's Trump Tower with an urgent message. He saw a, quote, scam happening with the midterm election voting in Philadelphia and elsewhere in Pennsylvania, and he wanted conservatives to do something about it. Quote, during our briefing, he was concerned that 2020 is going to happen again in 2022, says former senior Trump administration official Michael Caputo, referencing Trump's debunked assertion that voter fraud in Philadelphia helped win Pennsylvania for Biden. Caputo, who attended the meeting alongside Bradford County Commissioner and a retired CIA officer, says there had a message back to the former president. Quote, our team encouraged him to be concerned. Furthermore, I'm advising Republicans to recruit and train election observers and a team of attorneys to oversee historically problematic precincts. By the way, historically problematic precincts means where Black people are voting, just to throw that out there. But it's not just one meeting, and it's not just Philly. In recent months, Trump has convened a series of in-person meetings and conference calls to discuss laying the groundwork to challenge the 2022 midterm election results. 4 people familiar with the conversations told Rolling Stone. In the conversations, pro-Trump groups, attorneys, Republican Party activists, and MAGA diehards often discuss the type of scorched earth legal tactics they could deploy. And they've gamed out scenarios for how aggressively challenging elections, particularly ones in which a winner is not declared on election night. If there's any hint of doubt about the winners, the teams plan to wage aggressive court campaigns and launch a media blitz. Trump himself set the blueprint for this on election night in 2020 when, with the race far from decided, he went on national television to declare, frankly, we did win the election. Trump has been briefed on multiple states and critical races, including in Georgia, but Pennsylvania has grabbed his interest most keenly, including in the Senate race between John Fetterman and Oz. So, first of all, let's restate, because Steve and I say this a lot, I believe actual like structural change is not going to come through electoral politics. Democrats, Republicans, we're going to get crumbs no matter who it is, because they're both bought by the donors. That's why we live in the United Corporations of America, the flag behind me. With that said, I don't think it bodes well for like the theoretical democracy that we have, because I don't think we have a legitimate democracy. But in the spirit of, you know, the democracy we want, I don't think it bodes well that we are now getting into a situation where essentially you're a few elected Secretary of States away from them stealing elections, like literally stealing elections. Because all around the country right now, Republicans are trying to remove some of the county officials, Secretary of States that certified the election for Biden and put in their own like MAGA cronies. That's not good because A, you have the chance of violence, but B, let's say in a dream scenario, you have, I don't know, a president, Steve Grumbine wins the Democratic primary or wins as a third party or whatever. Name your person. Chris Hedges, Nina Turner, whatever. And they win a primary. How do we know that if they win the general election, that it's not going to be stolen from a progressive? I mean, it doesn't matter. Even neoliberals, like even if it's a corporatist who wins, if we now basically have active plotting going on that is not at all going to be condemned by the mainstream of the Republican Party. What makes this difference than like Mexico, where cartels have people like cartel members hovering around election polls and election sites to intimidate people not to vote or to vote a certain way? It's really scary because this isn't about whether you like want the Democrats to win or the Republicans to win, but Trump has normalized so many abnormal things. And this abnormal thing means even though we're not putting all our apples in the electoral basket, that the electoral basket technically, I mean, they literally could just toss out electoral votes, remove officials that certify, or, I mean, intimidate people until their candidates win.
I mean, this is stuff that happened a long, long time ago. I mean, we used to see this kind of stuff happen in the 60s and, you know, before they had stripped away some of the nonsense that was, you know, stopping black and brown people from voting, period, back in the day. I mean, literally. And now they've stripped away almost all protections. And now they're just like saying, you know, saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, they're not even hiding from it, right? So, you know, I have no love for the Republican Party, as I hope everyone knows, but I have no love for the Democratic Party either. And the problem is, and I think this is probably a bigger problem, because none of this stuff would stick with anybody if there wasn't something that people were really angry about, right? And I think I hate to say this, but I think the reason why things like this even have any life at all is because of what was done to Bernie Sanders in 2016 and 2020. I think people, because you saw a large sect of what would have been the right-leaning libertarian style Bernie-crats break away completely and go QAnon, go commie MAGA, etc., all in the name of basically what happened to Bernie. I understand, I'm pissed too, but the reality is that this stuff is so far over the top. I mean, but there's people that believe it, and I think that the death of the Republican Party was widely overstated, because we're watching people that were lefties, and I say lefties because I know people, oh, the right wing, the left wing, they're all part of the same bird, whatever. I roll, I see the back of my head. The fact is that the parties are not left, they're both right wing parties. So the quibbling that they do is irrelevant. It's the left and right in real terms, like you and me, how we feel about what we want society to look like. And very people that I thought would have been lefties have found their way over to QAnon and to all that nonsense to stop the steal. I saw lefty YouTube hosts, I think you probably know a few of them, so-called lefty YouTube hosts, talking about stop the steal themselves. So we know full well that this has worked. This crazy, pathetic, sicko-minded, you know, shit has really, really permeated the movement, sadly. So as much as it sounds insane to us, as much as it sounds like it couldn't possibly be true, we're watching people we once stood in line with at a Bernie rally over there supporting this crap.
Yeah.
So, you know, you have to understand the genesis. The fact is, because of the superdelegates, because of the very appearance of Bernie being robbed of 2 primaries, people have that in their head that elections are fixed. And you can go all the way back to the hanging chads of Bush and Gore to remember this. And a lot of people our age, I know my age in particular, remember that distinctly, that entire run of the hanging chad and the recounts in Florida. So there has been issues, and then black box voting and all the other things that have come out. There are real life issues that affect the integrity of the elections that even allow this to hold any water. That's the problem. That's the problem. It's not that it's Alex Jones, biggest freaking liar on the planet, but he says just enough truth by accident, just enough innuendo that people that have a mind to be swept away with bullshit will be swept away with bullshit. And so I think that this could be bigger than we think. I don't just think that it'll be standard MAGA Republican election deniers. I think that there are people out there with no real political compass and no real morals anymore. They've lost all sight, all sense of anything, and they'll support this. So be wary. I think it's bigger than just Trump.
Absolutely. Before I continue, I just want to tell the audience right now, the Status Coup police are coming because you have not pressed the like button. I need every single person in this audience, press that like button. Even if you don't like me, do it for Steve. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this. Steve, honestly, why I wanted to start with this is it really brings back memories for me. I don't know if you saw this, but literally after Election Day, I was in Philadelphia still. I was on the ground in 2020, and there were literally like a street outside the Philadelphia Convention Center where they were counting votes, and you had MAGA people on one side and regular, I don't want to say regular, but other people on the other side. And the MAGA people were pushing this stop the steal bullshit because that's what Trump was pushing. And literally in the middle of the night, police arrested somebody, family who came up from Virginia, who literally had weapons and called in bomb threats to the convention center. Fortunately, nothing happened because they were arrested. But that's the kind of stuff that has happened in 2020. Since then, you had people sending pipe stuff. I think it was pipe bombs or something to CNN. We're not friends of CNN, but we're not talking about committing violence on CNN. The answer is not violence. There have, like we said, there have been people that attacked the FBI office after Trump was raided. There's more militia activity. Obviously, Charlottesville. It's January 6th. So we've already seen these kind of violent, I don't want to say breadcrumbs, but brick by brick by brick. And now you have Trump, who has directly called for violence. Punch him in the face. I'll pay your legal bills. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen if they indict me. It might not be good. So I just think putting whatever your political views are aside, I think it's a really dangerous situation because it also, look at January 6th and that has given media the excuse for a year and a half to ignore even further the issues that we care about, just continuing to cover January 6th. So with Trump and the Republicans basically plotting whatever the fuck they're going to do to try and overturn election results if it doesn't go for them, and if there is violence, that's going to be what's covered again up till 2024, burying union drives, worker strikes, 10-inch unions. I mean, if there is a God, economic boycotts. So I think it has a lot of different levels. A, we don't want people to get hurt, obviously, but B, we don't need this as the predominant thing covered in politics. Political violence. We need actual workers fighting back, people fighting back. And the media would love to cover this. Anything with conflict, possibly blood. I mean, that's why when they go to the Black Lives Matter protest, they're covering or trying to play up potential violence. So your final thoughts on this?
No, I mean, let's be fair. The right wing and the Republican Party, conservatives as a whole, much of their culture, and this is not to lefties that own guns. I want to be crystal clear here. I know lefties, good lefties that have guns and are not willing to get rid of them, and I get it. History of gun control is not on the left side in this matter, or people in precarity, at all. But the right, the conservatives, it is all part of their culture. I mean, forget the outward facing culture, the angry, raging, we see the violence culture. I'm talking about like the good family, son sitting on dad's knee, telling them stories of what grandpappy did and stuff. I mean, it's very, very deeply entwined in who they are as an identity. Think about coal miners, same thing. I mean, it's a dirty, filthy job, but there's a tremendous amount of pride in being a coal miner if you're from that community. And there's a tremendous amount of pride with being a deer hunter, with owning rifles, with having knowledge of this stuff. So it's very, very important to remember that throughout that MAGA crowd, and this is not an indictment on every conservative, it's just a true statement. They are armed to the gills. Okay. So for the freaks, the ones that are really freaking trying to cause problems for people, I'm not talking about people that are ready to revolt and bring about good government for the people. I'm talking about the people we're talking about, right? The nutters. They are armed to the gills. So these threats, they don't just come toothless. They come with lots of weapons. And, that's not an advertisement for gun control. That's just an advertisement for making sure people understand that this is not something to be taken lightly. And you could see the reactionaries in the pseudo left too that fall for this stuff. There is people that are bent toward reactionary responses, and they're easily led and easily stirred up. And this kind of thing is terrifying. The violence that we could experience is real. I know in Pennsylvania alone, some of the advertisements from guys like Doug Mastriano, who I've spoken about several times, absolutely off the charts insane. absolutely freaking insane. And so, my fear in my own hometown, in my own backyard, is real. And I mean, I'm surrounded by conservatives that I have to get along with, and I, work with and enjoy their company because they're people and they're here. But at the end of the day, their ideological worldview, I mean, when the siren calls, they'll heed the call. And it's important to understand that this is not something to just kind of blow off. It's a very real dynamic.
Yeah. And before we move on, I just want to put up, Colin, this is from CNN. Early and absentee voting ramps up as almost 7.3 million ballots cast in 2022 midterms. It's on par. It's remaining on pace with 2018, which was the highest midterm voter turnout in recent history. In 2018, obviously, Democrats retook the House. Don't know if that high turnout now is good for Democrats or bad for Republicans. What we do know is a lot of people are voting mail-in ballots. That tends to be more Democrats than Republicans. And we know that Donald Trump, stupidly, because if he would have encouraged his voters to vote mail-in as well as in person, he might have won in 2020. But we know Trump and his loony, stop the steal people make it seem like mail-in ballots are fraudulent, or if they come in after election night, which many of them do, that you're somehow trying to steal the election, when in reality, election day votes get counted first, and then they move on to the mail-in ballots. So that's how many, that's a lot of votes so far. It might break the 2018 record. And I just wanted to show some of the recent polling in some key ones. I mean, polling's been all over the place, but CNN's poll, Fetterman right now is up by 6 points over Oz in CNN's poll. I think it'll ultimately come down to probably 2 or 3 points either way. Shapiro in Pennsylvania is beating your aforementioned Mastriano by 11 points.
Thank God.
Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is up by a point. It's basically every poll I've seen between Johnson and Mandela Barnes is about tied, or Johnson up a little bit. Governor's race, the Democratic governor, Wisconsin's up a little bit, 2 points. And Whitmer is up by, what is that? 6? I can't do math. I think that's 7 points in
6
Michigan.
points.
Yeah. So it's a toss-up. I think Republicans at this point is pretty clear are going to retake the House. Senate, I honestly think Senate, it could come down to it not changing and it still being a tie, or Republicans taking it by a seat, which we know Republicans, if they take it by a seat, they're not going to make any excuses. The parliamentarian will not stop them. Laws will not stop them. They'll be going full blast ahead. So smash that like button, share this live stream. Super chats are appreciated. I'll read them at the end. Moving on, Steve. I don't know if you saw this. I guess truth in it wasn't a verbal tick. It was what she really wants. Nancy Pelosi, she was on the Sunday shows, and you would think that Nancy Pelosi knows that every Republican opposition group has her on record because they love using her in ads. So you would think she'd be careful about what she says. But Nancy Pelosi, when pressed on inflation, just openly said, yeah, we should change the topic. Let's take a look.
So, and the fact is that when I hear people talk about inflation, as I heard him there, we have to change that subject. Inflation is a global phenomenon. Yes. The EU, the European Union, the UK, the British have higher inflation rate than we do here. It's not, the fight is not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
I have a lot to say. I'm going to let you go first.
Well, Nancy Pelosi, God love her. She must have the best plastic surgeon in the world. She's like 80 some years. Anyway, I digress. When it comes down to inflation, inflation can be good for people. It can be bad for people, right? Inflation is good for debtors. Once the value, quote unquote, is up, then people, they hold on to their money, and it creates the major, recessions that we have and so forth. It is about income not matching and keeping up with the inflation. So if our incomes were rising in conjunction with the actual, inflationary numbers that we're dealing with, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. She'd probably sort of have a, she'd sort of have a point in that it's really about, the cost of living in terms of real, income, and people have not gotten, and you can look and see that income has still stayed stagnant pretty much for the last 50 years. I mean, very, very little in terms of, increase in pay. But Nancy Pelosi also doesn't want to take shot at all the things that are bringing about that inflation, because Biden is not handling it. And because Biden's not handling it, because none of the Democrats have a good answer for what's causing it, and it's pretty clear there's like 3 or 4 key factors that are bringing it about. And top of the list is gouging. That would be her donor class. She's not going to speak against them, is she?
Right.
So Nancy Pelosi, let's move on. That's a sure, clear sign that their donors and the people that they represent, because they don't represent us, right? They don't. Clearly, they do not. She doesn't want to get in trouble with them, so that's what it comes down to. And she's setting the talking points for the rest of them by doing things like this. The rest of them won't touch inflation now because of that. So right. It's a shame, but yeah.
Colin, actually, let's play the second clip, because Pelosi's staff must have realized, like, oh, not a good thing to say change the subject. So they put out like a mashup of her interview. Let's see how they edited it.
Social Security and Medicare are on the line. A woman's right to choose is on the line. The planet is on the line. Issues that relate to prescription drugs. Yes. For years, we've been trying to get the secretary to negotiate for lower prices. We couldn't get it done until we had the Democratic president and a strong majority and enough in the Congress to get it done. The fight is not about inflation. It's about the cost of living.
So they cut that whole "let's change the subject" part, and I'm pretty sure inflation and the cost of living are kind of the same thing. I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. Maybe the poll people told her to change it to cost of living. But here's the thing, Steve. Obviously, we know that they wouldn't actually institute policy to take on corporate price gouging. We know that, but they could at least talk like it, right? They could at least like fake it, like WWE wrestling. Like they could point out, like, 50% of the corporate price gouging, 50% of inflation is corporate price gouging. And if you reelect us, we're going after them. We're going to pull those fossil fuel companies subsidies of $15 billion a year. We're actually going to do something about these stock buybacks. We're going to make it illegal to buy back your stock if you make a certain amount of profit. Of course, then if they are reelected, they won't do it and, just blame the parliamentarian or some other bullshit. It's unbelievable to me they're not even talking like this and faking it. And by the way, on the stock buybacks, Colin, could you show that tweet? As this is from, who is this from? Carl Quintanilla from CNBC. Goldman, buybacks are back. Corporates are on pace to repurchase over 1.1 trillion of U.S. stocks this year, which will go down as the most in their history of the stock market. Last week was a very active week. Literally, these companies are not even hiding the fact that your inflation is because they're making record profits and greasing their stock prices. It would be very easy for Nancy Pelosi or any Democrat on the campaign trail to point this out and say, you want to know something? We're going to go after them. They are fleecing the American people, and we're going to go after them. Their donors know they won't, but just say it. But they won't even speak of it because, honestly, I think they're deathly afraid of ruffling their donors' feathers in the final stretch when they need those extra ad dollars, when they need those extra. It's grotesque. And, oh, by the way, I mean, Bernie does it. I got my qualms with Bernie, but he was on CNN yesterday. He was talking about just that. It's wildly popular. They could also point out they held a vote in the House to put a cap, do something on corporate price gouging. Every Republican voted against it. So it's just so transparent what's going on here. And the Democrats deserve what they get. They really deserve to lose.
We got a really big point here that isn't talked about nearly enough. And that is that the Federal Reserve, who, because we've been stupid about this and dumbed down to the point of like barely amoebas, we've got it wrapped in our head that this thing is federal, or is not federal, it's private. And so Congress can't do anything. Woe is be, the big giant US with all its military is slaves to the Federal Reserve. And therefore we can't operate without the Federal Reserve. And so they've got this whole thing going on. And while the Federal Reserve is simultaneously doing the bidding of this administration by jacking interest rates up, literally giving a handoff to those large corporations that have holdings that will get additional interest, all the rich in that group that will get that money through additional interest. And as they give them that giant sucking sound, they're going to buy back their stocks with the take from that, and then simultaneously leave us even further down, like way exacerbating the wealth inequality in America, like to the point of absurdity. That's why she doesn't want to talk about inflation right there, because what they are doing is going to lay off millions and millions of people, probably just after the election. Okay. Because this is their bullshit way of addressing inflation, because they don't understand inflation. And when you're a monetarist, you don't understand inflation. So what do? You kill the host. You literally kill the entire economy. Make sure that the haves stay intact. They're perfectly fine through it. And then they retrench. They buy up our foreclosures. They buy us off the unemployment line for cheap. And then they go ahead and they make us file bankruptcy and pay them back anyway. So this is part of the plan. I don't care what anybody says. I know I'm on the target here. And the fact of the matter is that that's why she doesn't want to talk about it. That's really why. Because can you imagine if Pelosi went up there right before the elections and said, everyone, we've got to tell you, we're going to be instituting more and more and more interest rate hikes so that we can, in fact, bring about enough unemployment so you all feel it, so that'll bring prices down. Why isn't she campaigning on that? That's what they're doing. That's really what they're doing. And unfortunately, because of the Alex Jones types, the Federal Reserve, only think federal about it, blah, blah, whatever, right? Because they can't stay focused. That right there is their attack strategy. And we are so screwed as a result of it. I'm terrified. I'm not even joking. Of all the things here that we could talk about being terrified about, it's this continuing rise of interest rates and the austerity that the lack of federal spending brings to the table. And the intent is literally to get millions of people unemployed, because that is right there, the Phillips curve and Say's law and all these other bullshit things that the right focuses on, that these monetarists and libertarians focus on. That is their whole strategy. And it's going to be painful. And I hope to God none of the viewers or listeners here get swept up in it. I hope I don't get swept up in it. I've been through it many times and it is brutally painful. But this right here, this is real. It's happening. It's happening. Period. It's happening. Right. So I hope folks realize that's the real story here. That is the story. Their goal is to lay off millions of people to bring inflation down through unemployment. That's it.
And what's incredible to me, I mean, we're going to cover the corporate media and their fucking propaganda next. It's just incredible. None of this is covered by any campaign reporters. None of it. They just cover polls. They cover strategy. They cover nothing. I mean, just kind of the horse race. None of them are covering, why do we even have inflation? Not what like the Republicans are telling you. By the way, Republicans aren't offering any actual specifics on how they're going to lower. Oh, tax cuts for the wealthy. That's how we're going to lower inflation. None of these reporters, I bet you if you put on CNN today, MSNBC, they're not reporting on that stock buyback. Why would they report on that? They're not reporting on the fact that, I mean, what are the actual extra costs that these companies are being incurred? And how does it correlate to what they're passing off to consumers? You know, they would, in many cases, they would call this, theft, bank robbery, but they don't want to cover it. They're not covering the fact that Lawrence Summers said we need to lay off 10 million people, or
that's it right there, baby.
Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, continues to say, yeah, we might have to go further. I mean, it's just crazy.
Let me ask you a question for real. I want you to think about this. And this is a big transition for folks. It took me a long time to get, but I hopefully we'll all see this, right? Money is kind of the least important thing. Money is kind of the thing we need at the bottom, right? We need money. We transact in money. We buy bread with the wealthy. It's a totally different world. I wonder if they even have a wallet. I wonder if they even hold credit cards in their wallet. I wonder if they even care about the actual money. It's just sort of nothing to them. At the end of the day, it's really about us. What they care about is real resources. What they care about is human resources, people doing what they want them to do. They care about is having access to power, to influence, to make things the way they are. Because when you're a god and you have all the money in the world, what do you want? You want eternity. You want to be that head on the Mount Rushmore. You want to be idolized and deified. And so this right here is all part of that gap. And I think that unfortunately, because we are all kind of stuck in this paycheck to paycheck world, and they don't feel this, right? They don't feel this. I mean, even if we stop buying their products, that mid-level people, the bourgeois, the petite bourgeois, whatever you want to call it, they will feel it. But the powers that be up top, they're not going to feel any of it. And they get to shake that thing until all the sand, all the people even out. You know, it's like, hey, it's the bag's too loose. Let's shake it till everyone's in the bottom squashed together. And that's what's happening. And I say this without any hyperbole at all. This is literally what I see happening. And I know that's not fun. I know nobody wants to hear that, but I hope that you get something out of what I'm saying, because I'm telling you, this is what I'm terrified of. And this is all I've really focused heavily on is the economic world. And so just trust me, as somebody who needs money, who literally will be impacted by this, I'm terrified. So anyway, that's my soaps.
Let's move on. Smash the like button, share this live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see. Super chats are very appreciated. I'm not going to lie. It's been tough sledding recently. Obviously we can't be on the road all the time. When I'm on the road, we tend to do better in terms of people signing up as members. Membership is how we grow. So consider becoming a member. By the way, we're going to have our members call later this week. Probably, what's today? Monday? I'm thinking Thursday night. So if you're a Status Coup member, pencil that in. StatusCoup.com/join. StatusCoup.com/join to become a member. But super chats are very appreciated. We don't have any corporate funding or any money from the vultures. I'm sorry, Steve. I'm going to have to play this clip in full. I don't know if you're on empty stomach, full stomach, but there is a trigger warning. This is violence. We don't expect much from MSNBC, but you do expect their slobbering over Democrats to at least be dignified. The following clip is just out of control. It's slobbering that you wouldn't even see in a dog if you put, a tasty peanut butter snack in front of them. Trigger warning. This is from Morning Joe on how amazing Joe Biden is. Let's take a look.
There's a ton of legislative wins, and not just legislative wins, but legislative wins that have been on Democratic wish lists, in some cases for decades. Climate change, prescription drug, bipartisan gun legislation, semiconductor bill, helping veterans with burn pits, the COVID relief bill. What he did legislatively with sort of tissue-thin margins in Congress is very impressive. The Biden people were quick to compare him to LBJ and FDR, but when you look at it, they did a lot. But what we also found were a number of missteps, some of them bad luck, some of them the result of poor decision making that really start when you look at his presidency. You look at last August with the twin crises of the Afghanistan withdrawal and how that played out, and the emergence of the Delta variant, which is, of course, just the first of, now we know, a number of new contagious COVID variants to hit this nation. And that's where he takes the first hit. And again, some of these things are out of his control, but one challenge we found sort of throughout, a through line, is that the president and his aides really mismanaged expectations, and some of this stuff came down simply to messaging, seemingly not to understand what Americans, for instance, were going through on inflation, their decision to repeatedly call it transitory when nothing feels transitory about going to the grocery store and milk and eggs cost a lot more money, and sort of that's where we left things. But as John said, it looks like, as of now at least, the president is making plans to run. And if former President Donald Trump does declare, as many people expect that he will, that is just going to push President Biden to run again.
Yeah. And at this point, you have to wonder if he chooses not to run again, what are the options?
Yeah, and those are the questions. But that said, you know, Reverend Al, if you looked at where the Biden presidency was 6 months ago, legislatively, and compare it to where it is now, it's really a tale of two presidencies. I mean, there have been some bipartisan pieces of legislation that have gone through, and also, of course, the reconciliation bill went through, and some other things that he's done on his own. He actually does have probably the best legislative record of any president, maybe since Bill Clinton.
I think that there's no question that Joe Biden has done better as president than even those of us that were supportive of him in a broad sense thought he would do. The legislation he got through, given the narrow lead that they have in the Senate and in the House, is something that reminds you all the way back to Lyndon Johnson. Even in the civil rights area, where we didn't get the George Floyd bill and the John Lewis bill, he was able to do executive orders. So I think he's above expectations with many of us.
Watch that on mushrooms.
Yeah, man. I mean, gee, many Christmas, talk about a freaking psychedelic experience. Wow.
Well, where do we start? I knew you were gonna. I knew when he mentioned Bill Clinton that would get your goose. So I guess well,
hold on. Let's ask the single moms out there. Hey, are you all happy that Bill Clinton did welfare reform and totally made it so that single moms struggling, can only have a lifetime 5 years on? I mean, all the SNAP and TANF require. I mean, aren't you happy? I mean, Bill Clinton was a great guy, wasn't he? Aren't you thrilled that he had a balanced budget and took more out of the economy that he put in? It's got to be a good feeling, right? Anyway,
and jailing a record number of black people, NAFTA.
Oh my God, yeah.
Name your pick.
Yeah, man.
This is the sickness. This is the sickness in our media system. It's that the voters that decide elections, I'm sorry to say, are old people, because they're the most reliable voter in presidential elections, in local elections, even in the midterms. 65 and up. They are determinative, really. To a lesser degree, 50 to 64. They come out every election, rain or shine, COVID or not. And this is the shit that they are consuming on the right or on the left. This is, in my view, a failure of independent media, that we don't have any way to message to them. We're not organized to message. It's not to say don't message to anyone under the age of 50, but the cable news audience that come out and they vote in every primary, and they vote in every general election, and they even vote for your mayor, your city council. They vote. They are being on the right, being fed that, the drag queen is threatening democracy, and the trans kid is a threat to all of us, and these invaders at the border they're the threat. And on the left, well, I don't want to say the left, but the liberals, they are being told that Joe Biden is the greatest thing since sliced bread. They are being told that it is a magical legislative victory to have a year child tax credit that he didn't fight to extend to, I don't know, a $1,400 check. Water down police reform bill that didn't even pass. Some tax credits to get solar panels billed as historic climate legislation, literally tax incentives for renewables while the planet is on fire. This is, she said, historic. She said lowering prescription drugs. Go listen to my interview with Michael Leidy, one of the top experts on healthcare, fierce advocate for Medicare for all. We spoke about this. He said, proof will be in the pudding. We don't even know what drugs the price is going to be lowered on. It doesn't apply to insulin, and it doesn't even start till 2026 that these drugs are lowered. $15 minimum wage? Yeah, forget that. Parliamentarians said no. Public option I ran on? No. I mean, I could go down the list. Maybe $10,000 student loan debt. Yeah, it helped. It's going to help some people. Although right now it's in legal limbo. I mean, it's just insane. Am I missing something, that there's some magical accomplishments that have passed under Biden?
Well, I think one thing to kind of keep your eyes on here, right, is Joe Biden is recognizing that the United States hasn't done shit for its people in a long time. And as a means of covering for that, he's going to start a Cold War with China to go ahead and try to cushion us and guard us from China's kicking our ass. Okay. And so there's so much here that is just pure, utter schadenfreude. So much is so just distractagon territories. The fact is that, and I think we're going to cover it here in a little bit, so I'll save some of my comments for that section. But the fact is that before Russia had done anything with Ukraine, we were already gearing up for war. When Hillary didn't win the nomination or win the election, they had already had Russia in their sights. They were already saying Russia created comic books of Buff Bernie. You remember Buff Bernie with the big muscles for Bernie Sanders, and they're like, oh, you're using Buff Bernie to win the election, to steal the election. So this has been a targeted attack because, and I say this, and I hope people pay attention, military Keynesianism is a thing. It's a real thing. And people that don't like seeing social spending, etc., will accept spending when it's for the military, when it's for war, when it's for something other than you and I, right? So in order to get that done, they're going to go ahead and create these Cold Wars. Because quite frankly, China, if you ever get to go to China, or if you've ever been to Japan or any of these, they are like night and day, more sophisticated, more advanced, more technologically savvy. And their whole country looks a hell of a lot nicer than what we got in the United States. I mean, they literally are kicking our ass because their central government is spending the money, making it a priority to make them the ass beaters of the world in terms of the business side, in terms of trade, etc., and in terms of building out their own internal infrastructure. So Biden, on all these things that you just laid out, I mean, they got to hide that because ultimately they're not following the China plan. China is looking at its citizens as its responsibility, whether you like China or not, whether you have some story of horrible abuses that they've done or not. I got 50 of them for the U.S., okay? So let's just keep that at bay. My point is that they are outpacing us in nearly every meaningful way. And the only way that Biden can figure out to do it, rather than spend big time in the United States and make us the pride of the world, he would rather instead demonize and just destroy any kind of relationships we could have with China so that we can suddenly catch up, because we have been asleep at the wheel for the last 50 effing years. So to me, all this other stuff, it's noise. This is the thing. Between the interest rates and the Cold War he's stirring up with China and Russia, real proxy war with Russia, China, I think they're gearing up for that as well. At least a Cold War for sure. So that's keep your eyes on that prize.
It's unreal. It's truly unreal. Which brings us to the last topic. You let it. And by the way, smash that like button. Keep sharing this live stream. I'll read your super chats at the end. So please, if you can, drop us a super chat. Merrick Garland was going to come out today with an announcement. Everybody on Twitter was all ablaze that it maybe had something to do with Trump. Instead, DOJ indicts nearly a dozen people in a China espionage cases. Garland said the new actions would, quote, disrupt criminal activity of individuals working on behalf of China. Justice Department officials on Monday announced that they charged nearly a dozen people in 3 separate cases related to espionage activity on behalf of China. 7 People's Republic of China individuals have been charged in the Eastern District of New York. 2 of them arrested on October 20th with participating in a scheme to force a U.S. resident to return to China. 2 Chinese individuals were charged with the same district with attempting to obstruct the criminal prosecution of a China-based telecommunications company. And 4 Chinese nationals have been charged in the District of New Jersey with conspiring to act as illegal agents on behalf of China. Quote, as these cases demonstrate, the government of China sought to interfere with the rights and freedoms of individuals in the U.S. and to undermine our judicial system that protects those rights. They did not succeed, Garland said. Garland was joined by the FBI director and other Justice Department officials, said that new actions would, quote, disrupt criminal activity of individuals working on behalf of China, while reiterating that the defendants were all presumed innocent. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm having a brain fart, so folks, maybe the audience can help me. What is that Noam Chomsky book, Manufacturing Consent, or something to that effect? I mean, this is all part of that, right? I mean, seriously, this is not even speculative. I mean, in order for us to suddenly get that, I mean, like, I hate China, we have to have something that they're doing to us, right? We gotta create this thing, but espionage is going. I bet you we have people in the UK right now that are in the United or from the UK is spying on the US right here now. I bet you we have people that are from Germany inside the US spying right now. At the end of the day, this is just, hey, we need China to be the bad guy. A few years ago, I don't know if you remember Biden's State of the Union address, where he called China out by name as like the most dangerous. Well, it turns out, ironically, that now all of a sudden he's telling us that Pakistan is also the most dangerous. Okay. And it's like, pick a lane, dude, pick a lane. But the reality is that what's the deal? Pakistan and China are very good friends. In fact, a friend of ours that's traveling around Europe and Asia took a picture. It's like, China, thank you so much for this collaboration. The fact is that we are going to demonize and vilify anyone that will allow us to build up enough internal excitement and internal approval ratings to do hot war, a cold war, a war of sorts, a proxy war. It doesn't matter, whatever it takes to demonize them so that we can have an excuse to build up here. That's the only game they know. And so they had to kill the economy so they could rebuild it again. And they'll rebuild it again with more surveillance apparatus, with more war machines, and maybe dangle in some infrastructure because businesses are tired of a broken supply chain. Maybe. Now, I can't guarantee you what's going to happen. I only know that the goals here are to demonize them so that we can get our act together because we have allowed it to slip for so freaking long. So that's my take. That's it.
I'm not, I don't want to pretend to be an expert on this. There's people who are much better versed at what we're doing with China. But what I do know is when America wants to distract away from its own issues, when America wants to distract away from its own government failure to actually help the people, when America wants to distract from its grotesque income inequality, homelessness, I mean, you name it, they'll point to China or Russia or Iran or whatever. And a lot of people think that it's actually anti-war Republicans. China is certainly the war that a lot of these Republicans want. I think there's a lot of Democrats that want war with China. And
damn right.
Like you said, the Chinese government, sure, I mean, they do some awful, terrible things, but they've kind of realized this very complicated thought. Investing in your people could actually be good for the government too. Making investments and spending money on transportation, climate investments. I mean, they've done such a buildup in terms of climate, high-speed rail, all those things could actually be good for business too. Obviously, it's not a capitalist system, but in many ways, it's not too dissimilar from a capitalist system. And the Chinese government, all this money that they've poured in over the years, far more investment than we've ever spent, is paying off, and their economy is doing really well. And in many ways, I hate to say it, it's, what do they say? Something about all things lift all boats.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Yep.
So
rising tide
lifts all, and they have a super educated populace. Part of that's because they make their kids be in school a lot longer than we do. But it's just unbelievable to me. They're reaping the return on investment to their investments, while we're pretending MMT. How are we going to pay for all these things?
I mean, all of them have quote unquote MMT as well. You know, just full disclosure, out in Japan right now, which is the perfect test bed. It's not 100%, but it's a perfect test bed of MMT in action. You see Japan is doing fantastic, ironically, very, very, very low inflation. Their government has chosen to put caps on pricing. They have done so many of the things that we could do. They bent the yield curve. They've literally made it so that, hey, we're going to keep this thing steady. You're not, I don't care what you do. We'll buy the debt. We'll buy our own debt over. We'll do whatever we have to. We are not allowing our citizens to get screwed by this. And a guy named Bill Mitchell, who's a great guy who I interview frequently over on Macro and Cheese, he's actually right now advising in Japan as well. And he's watching the stuff happening. And China is literally the same exact scenario. They quote unquote print their money and they spend it. They know full well that in order to achieve their ends, they have to spend like crazy. I mean, I hate to say this, but even other countries that maybe really had some really evil dictators understood the power of fiat currency as well, and were able to build up their war machine, say in 1930s and 40s. They understood this as well. And if you look back in time, the US dropped their gold standard so it could fight this war back in World War II. So we know this is not new. We're not into some new territory here. We've already seen this, so we know. So the US acting like it's broke and it can't do these things, and oh my God, inflation, we can't cap prices, we can't. FDR showed us we can do this. We've seen it in action, whether we like FDR or not. And that's another story we can have a talk about someday. But the fact is that he did take steps to make the economy work for regular people. And I think it's very important to note that they pretend like they don't know because the average person doesn't know, so they can get away with acting like, what do you mean? And that's what they're doing. It is the biggest bunch of bullshit ever, because this is history. This is easy stuff, man. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that World War II happened. I mean, long for some people, but not in grand scheme of things, really not that long ago. And they spent like crazy. There was no question they did. And they understood that they had to sell war bonds to kind of take the heat off the economy, that way people would pull their money out of trying to buy cars and other consumer products, and they would put their money into bonds that would earn a nominal interest rate. So they didn't spend it on consumer goods that weren't there and drive up inflation for a demand pull, being that we have no goods and services being made at the time, right? We know these things. This is history. And yet we act like we don't know them when it's the here and now. So I honestly, the theater that we're watching as they destroy our lives is just, it's very painful. It's like you've been told, you've been given a forward version of a book, an early edition of a book. You read it and you're going over the waterfall and you're like, please stop this. Please stop this. And everybody's like, why? We want to go down the waterfall. What are you talking about? It's like, I know what's at the bottom. And done. That's what it feels like to kind of know the history and know this stuff and see it. And it's like, yay, let's go. Let's all go for a ride down the hill. Anyway, that's terrible. It's just terrible.
Absolutely.
There's not much more to say.
One last thing real quick. I should have started this at the beginning, but since the corporate media is probably not going to cover it, another day, another shooting in America. Teacher and teen student killed in a shooting at South South St. Louis High School. The suspect is dead. A teenage girl and a health teacher were shot to death, and 6 others were injured Monday morning at a Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in South St. Louis. Police confronted the gunman inside the school and killed him. The suspect was 20. Police haven't said what connection, if any, he had at the school. One survivor heard him say he was tired of everybody in the school. His gun jammed at one point, giving kids time to escape. Authorities haven't released the name of the woman and the teenage girl who died, but relatives of the woman identified her as a 61-year-old Jean Kuska, who taught health and physical education. Yeah, I don't really know. I think obviously the shooting is awful, but I think what's even more awful is like 2 dead, couple injured. It's not enough to actually cover. Like, that's kind of the sentiment now. If it's not like 5 or 6 dead, maybe this would get a mention, like 30 seconds going to a commercial tonight on cable news. But only 2 dead, couple injured. Got to get back to the horse race. There's going to be another Uvalde at some point, another concert shooting or this or that. If Democrats keep the Senate and the House, do I really think they're going to do much on guns? No. Obviously, the Republicans aren't going to do anything. If anything, they'll pass more shit to make it easier. So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that more death at schools. I'm sure there might be some others I'm not aware of that have happened in the recent week. It's really gross how numb we've become. Not us, but the media itself.
Yeah, I mean, when I was recording this week's Grumble, I was devastated. I was already depressed. I mean, like I said it in the video, right? But I was truly depressed. I was talking to Colin late, and I was like, man, I just don't know how to get out of the way. And this kind of like tsunami of negative news, tsunami of negative externalities in our lives, it's just over freaking whelming. And, it's hard to sometimes get up and smile and get in front of a camera when you feel about, like an amoeba just squishing down in your chair full of depression. But the information is so important. And when you look at shootings like this, it just adds to it. And I think, I remember at 9/11 going to the airports and remember the first time ever seeing like military in the airports, holding their rifles, having, the gear on. And it's like, this is stuff you saw on television in Israel and Palestine and Pakistan and, all around the world. In that way, you saw it, back in the day, like it was crazy, but that was always over there. It was the first time I physically saw it live in our country then. And it was shocking. Now, if you saw that, you'd be like, it's just the way it is. And now that all these shootings are happening, and they've been happening, this isn't something new. But it's just with all the other negative energy out there, with all the other negative stories out there, with so little to find hope in terms of the news cycle. Yeah, I mean, I suspect that when you put this out there on the news, that people are genuinely fatigued from being depressed and fatigued from a constant barrage of just complete and utter negative stuff. And
not to be, by the way, I missed this, but there was also a mass shooting in Chicago. I don't want to give the right wingers any ammo to, use their Chicago talking point, but this mass shooting during the 100 car caravan kills 3 people, injures 2. A night of street racing ended in gunfire in Chicago's Brighton Park neighborhood. 5 people were shot. 3 of them died early Sunday morning. A resident who lived nearby told CBS that everyone was having fun. Then shots rang out. I just hear pop, 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 and I'm gone. Several donut circles were still visible Sunday at the intersection. It was just jam-packed with cars, all directions, all 4 directions. It was a dead stop. People were sitting on top of their cars watching people spin out there. 3 people died and 2 were critically injured. when someone opened fired. Yep. I don't know who shot who and what the motivation was, but it's only going to get worse. And this goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Listen, January 6th, there could have been bullets flying. Trust me. And what makes you think with all this violent talk that's coming, to be clear, from Republicans, there's no false equivalency here. Democrats are awful, but they're not telling you go get your guns. People aren't going to bring guns to voting booths or worse. So, yeah, not trying to unnecessarily worry anyone, but it's not, you're not safe just walking around in America these days. And that's not, oh, crime is out of control. It's because guns are out of control. In addition to the societal, what we talk about, people are hurting economically, societally. And when that happens, hurt, desperation can turn to violence. So
hurt people.
Yes. Let's read some super chats. Also, by the way, folks, just to let you know, if you've been with us for a while, you know we have a GoFundMe. If not, we have a GoFundMe. We launched it many years ago, so we never really officially ended it. We've raised $186,000 over 4 years. To be clear, we don't have $186,000 on hand. We've spent that over years covering stories, paying freelancers, traveling. But I'm going to be taking a little bit of a temporary leave around Thanksgiving for a month or two to work on my book. So we're going to be doing a fundraiser before I leave so that we could keep the lights on. Status Coup is not shutting down while I take some time off. But we're going to have some fill-in hosts. We'll definitely still have people on the ground when things are going on. But I wanted to shout out some GoFundMe donations and ask you if you have the means. If you don't, I know times are tough. Please chip into our GoFundMe. Any amount makes a difference. Colin will put the link in the super chat. William Conan donated $300 a few days ago. So thank you so much. Mary Gregory, $25. Christina Suazo, $100 2 days ago. I really, really appreciate it. We also had somebody donate $250 to our members site. So at StatusCoupMember.com, if you're a member, StatusCoupMember.com, that's where you get the behind the scenes videos, access to old members calls. You could also donate at the members site. So that's StatusCoupMember.com. So Cody was kind enough to donate $250 at our member site. So thank you so much, Cody. It really makes a difference. Tony Dallas, $2. Wow, MSNBC recognized that COVID is over. Don't agree with you, but thanks for the super chat. Actually, this new variant they're saying is going to be the worst this winter.
It says is not over.
Oh, he's not over.
Yeah, you
Tony,
agree with him.
Stand corrected. My apologies.
You agree with him.
I have reading comprehension problems. Jay, the informant, $2. Al Tap Dancing Sharpton. Don't even fucking get me started. Ugh, Al Sharpton. Don't even fucking get me started. Thanks for the super chat. Humorous, $10. We're all slaves in this country. You just don't know it because you cannot see the chains and bars that bind you. People like this man, Steve Grumbine, has the keys to unlock your chains and bars. That is a high compliment to you.
Thank you.
Double K, 1999. Thank you as always. Double K. Humorous, another $10. Yeah, the oligarchs that own us have dumbed down our children for decades with public schools because no one gets involved. No one stands up together as one. I would say they've actually dumbed down everybody with corporate propaganda masquerading as news. That's what's dumbing down the masses, mainstream media. And even digital media, it's most Daily Beast, BuzzFeed, Mother Jones, The Atlantic. It's all bullshit and sideshows anyway. Double K, another 1999. Love Colin with a heart. I'm sure he loves you back. Thank you. Steve, promote your stuff.
Macro and Cheese podcast platforms. Folks, it's not video, it's audio. So you can ride around on your tractor or kick it in the bathtub and listen to Macro and Cheese. Release Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Macro, the letter N, and Cheese. You can find it on iTunes, Google, everyone, Spotify, SoundCloud, you name it. And then obviously Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do the Rogue Scholar, which is my show over at Real Progress in Action. Please come on over there and support us. We're low maintenance. And then if you don't mind, I also do a couple shows here at the Coup. Tuesdays typically, and Sundays for the Grumble, and tonight a special appearance with my buddy Jordan. So thank
Absolutely. And check out Steve's episode from yesterday. It's up on the channel. Let's Get Ready to Grumble, where you discussed societal ills. Very deep topic. I watched some of it. I have to watch the rest tonight in my bath. So thank you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Colin. We'll be back at it tomorrow. Please consider signing up as a member, statuscoup.com/join. And like I said, if you've donated before to the GoFundMe, I very much appreciate it. And if it's at all possible, please support us. Obviously, we have a lot of costs that other channels don't have. I just put the link to the GoFundMe in the super chat one more time. It's also in the description under this video. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow.